Have you ever heard the term scaling budgets, scaling aggressively, just scaling in general with online YouTubers that talk about Facebook ads with Shopify? It's very vague, right? Like a lot of people think that, scaling a store is pretty much just as simple as, pumping out a few ad sets, finding one that works or finding 10 that works, and then just increasing the budget over time or something along those lines. And I want to tell you that that's not true at all. And the reason is because I think everybody has not a wrong perception, but kind of like a messed up perception of how budgets actually work on Facebook. What I don't understand is why people call testing budgets scaling budgets. There's a big difference, and I need to call this out because there is a massive difference between running a $5 a day ad set and running a $20 a day ad set, okay? It's not as simple as just increase the budget and it'll perform the same. Honestly, as a matter of fact, it's not even as simple as if you have two exactly the same ad sets, they'll perform the same. That's not even true either. My question is, why do people keep referring to scaling as increasing budgets, editing budgets, duplicating and increasing budgets? Because I really want to make this video to differentiate testing from scaling and how do I personally define testing and how do I personally define scaling? Because in my opinion, you need to know the difference between these two or you're going to be very misguided when you go out and try to learn how to either test or how to scale. Mainly how to scale, because a lot of people make scaling out to be just like spending more money or increasing budgets or doing this or doing that. So I really want to start with how I kind of grow the stores that I grow and what kind of basis that I operate off of. So really, in terms of testing and transitioning into scaling, the way that I work is I test a product at first. I kind of start slow, maybe like 7 ad sets at $5 a day or $20 a day, depending on the margin of the product. And I let it go, 2 or 3 days and see how it does, right? Like I'm honestly expecting profitability pretty much out the gate in the first 2 or 3 days. And most of the time it happens. If it's a good product and it will end up being a winner, usually it's profitable right away. There's no, you don't need a seasoned pixel, you don't need any of that stuff. So what I do from that point, like let's say I get like 2 to 3 sales on a high ticket product in the first 2 days. Great. What I do is I let it run for like 4 or 5 days. I might add a couple ad sets or whatever. But from that point, I will continue testing. So the first step is basically you test the product. And I just basically do a basic ad copy, basic video. It doesn't have to be perfect the first round, but what you do want is something good enough to kind of throw it out there and see if something sticks. And even then, even if it's not perfect or the video could be better or the ad copy could be better, any of that stuff, it's still enough to make it profitable. So from that point, you're just testing the product. So, you just tested the product, it did okay. So now what I like to do is to continue testing with the product. Instead of like trying to scale it or whatever, I stay in the testing phase. So this could mean, testing new interests. Like I'll make a new campaign with 10 new interests and see if I can get more than just those original 7 to pop off. Or maybe I'll launch the original 7 with new ad copy or new videos or new images or something, just test something. And the reason I do this is because your first hit is not always the best hit. You might launch your first campaign, give it a second or give it a few days, and then it does okay, but you could do another ad creative or another video that just does way better, like $10 less cost of purchase or whatever. So I like to test in the beginning just to get a good idea for what works. And once I have a good idea for what works, that's when I make the transition from testing into scaling. And no, that does not mean scaling budgets and ramping up the spend. This is where a lot of people get it mixed up. So my definition of scaling is once you go through the testing phase and you have something that works, scaling is literally just doing more of whatever it is that worked. It doesn't matter if you're doing budgets, creatives, like it doesn't really matter if you're scaling horizontally or vertically or testing budgets, whatever, it doesn't matter. But my point is really all that scaling is testing different stuff, different creatives, different budgets, doesn't matter. And then once you find kind of your secret recipe, then scaling is doing more of whatever it is that you did that worked. So this is why scaling budgets really frustrates me, because people think that if you have a $5 a day ad set, you can just bump it up to 10 or bump it up to 20 or increase it by 20% and it's going to perform the same, when in reality it's going to perform completely different. Or it could perform the same, right? But it's super unpredictable. It's basically going to optimize differently. So that means it could do better, it could do worse, it could do the same. So it's kind of like, yes, it could do the same, but chances are it'll either do worse or better, which is why I think that testing budgets is a great idea. Like if you're starting with 5, maybe it's a good idea to try a campaign with $10 budgets. Or if you're testing with 10, maybe it's a good idea to test with 15. My issue is when people call that scaling because they have the wrong expectations. If you have a $5 a day budget doing great and you want to scale, then just keep on scaling with $5 budgets. Just make more ad sets with $5 budgets. And yes, on the side, you might want to continue testing budgets. Like, why don't you take your 7 best ad sets and test them at a $10 budget or a $15 budget? And that's great, but this is like the biggest issue with, you know, the mindset of scaling budgets, because people think that, you know, you can have one ad set doing really good at 5 and just ramp up the spend and it'll spend the same the entire time, which is total nonsense, and it doesn't work like that at all. When in reality, what you should do is test until you find something that works, and then just do more of what is working. And that's where a lot of people mess up too, is they just keep testing, which if all you're doing is increasing budgets all the time, then all that you're doing is just testing. You're not really scaling anything. You just keep on testing new budgets. You keep on testing different increasing the budget methods, like should I add $5? Should I add 20%? Should I do this? Should I do that? So if you're scaling budgets on an ad set or a campaign, you're no longer scaling, right? Like that's not the definition of scaling. It's basically all that you're doing is you're just continuously testing, and you're never ever taking a step back from testing and capitalize on what it is that you did that worked. The whole benefit of testing is so that you can find something that works really well and then do it over and over and over and over again. And if you're just constantly testing budgets, then you're missing out on the whole point of testing in the first place. So I hope that that makes a lot of sense for you, but that's all I wanted to say. Just a quick little video giving you my rundown, my opinion of scaling budgets and testing, and like how all that kind of, like my mindset when I'm going into scaling is totally different than, you know, most people's, and I really wanted to share my opinion on that. So more videos are going to be coming on strategies and all this little specific stuff that I do in the future. Just hang in there. But as for this video, this is Noah Brewer, and I'm out. Peace.